Inside a 27-story private skyscraper in Mumbai, there's a room that produces artificial snowflakes on demand. Not a ski resort, not a theme park, a room inside a house. Built because the owner's wife wanted to feel winter in a city where the temperature rarely drops below 80 degrees. The man who built that room also built a telecom network with over 500 million subscribers, threw a $600 million wedding for his son, and controls a company responsible for roughly 10% of India's entire GDP. His name is Mukesh Ambani. And the Ambani family is not just rich. They are a category of wealth that the word billionaire was never designed to describe. The clerk who built an empire from spices. Every dynasty starts somewhere. For the Ambanis, it started in a dusty port town in Aden, Yemen, in the late 1950s. Picture a young man barely out of his teens, no university degree, no family connections, no capital, standing in a warehouse stacked with crates of spices and bolts of cheap fabric. His name was Dhirubhai Ambani, and his job was to sort, count, and catalog merchandise for a small trading company. A clerk, the lowest rung on the commercial ladder, paid just enough to share a room with other workers and eat 2 meals a day. But Dhirubhai was not learning the job. He was learning the game. He watched how margins were set behind closed doors, how goods were priced differently across borders depending on who was buying and who was desperate to sell, how relationships between buyers and sellers could be leveraged to create profits from thin air. He memorized shipping schedules, currency fluctuations, and the names of every trader who walked through the warehouse doors. By the time he returned to India in 1958, he carried something far more valuable than savings. He carried a playbook written in the language of global trade, a mental map of how money really moves when nobody is watching. In 1966, in the middle of India's suffocating license Raj, a regulatory system so restrictive that starting a business required navigating a maze of permits, quotas, and government approvals that could take years, Dhirubhai founded Reliance Textiles Industries. He started with fabrics, simple polyester, and textiles sold to middle-class Indian families. Nothing glamorous, nothing revolutionary on the surface. But underneath, the man was building a machine designed to scale vertically textiles to polyester, polyester to petrochemicals, petrochemicals to oil refining. The crown achievement was the Jamnagar refinery, which became the single largest oil refinery on Earth at a single location, processing over 1.4 million barrels of crude per day, employing tens of thousands of workers in a facility so massive it has its own internal road network, its own power plant, and its own port. A small city built to convert raw crude oil into the fuel that powers the subcontinent. But the move that truly changed India forever came in 1977, when Reliance launched its IPO. Dhirubhai did not target institutional investors or banks. He went directly to the people. Millions of middle-class Indians, teachers, shopkeepers, auto rickshaw drivers, bought shares in Reliance, becoming shareholders in a company that many of them could barely explain. He held shareholder meetings in cricket stadiums because no conference hall in the country was large enough to hold the crowds. It was the first time ordinary Indians felt like they owned a piece of the future. And that emotional bond between Reliance and the Indian public became a support system that no competitor could replicate and no regulator could break. A clerk in a spice warehouse built the largest private company in Indian history. What is the humblest job you have ever worked that taught you the most? Drop it in the comments. The war between brothers. And then the man who built it all died without a will. In 2002, Dhirubhai Ambani suffered a stroke and passed away, leaving behind the most valuable private company in India and absolutely no written instructions about who should control it. The empire he had spent 4 decades building was suddenly up for grabs. And the 2 men standing at the edge of the cliff were his own sons, Mukesh Ambani and Anil Ambani, brothers, heirs, and now rivals. The feud between them became the most public corporate war India had ever witnessed. Stock exchanges shook. Media outlets ran 24-hour coverage. Regulatory bodies scrambled to contain the fallout. Investors who had trusted Reliance with their life savings watched in horror as the empire that Dhirubhai built appeared to crack down the middle. Picture 2 brothers sitting across from each other in a room with their mother between them. Kokilabhan Ambani, a woman who had watched her husband build everything from nothing and now had to divide it before her sons destroyed it entirely. In 2005, she brokered the split, Mukesh took Reliance Industries Limited, the refining, petrochemicals, and oil and gas divisions, the heavy iron, the industrial backbone. Anil received telecom, power generation, and financial services, the flashier, faster-moving sectors. At the time, many analysts believed Anil had gotten the better deal. Telecom was the future. Energy was old money. The talking heads on business television declared that Anil Ambani had outmaneuvered his older brother, securing the faster-growing sectors, while Mukesh was left holding the heavy iron of refining and petrochemicals. But over the next 2 decades, the outcomes diverged so dramatically, they barely seemed to come from the same family. Mukesh's branch became an engine of unprecedented scale, doubling, tripling, expanding into entirely new industries with a discipline that bordered on obsession. Anil's branch struggled under mounting debt, legal battles, regulatory penalties, and competitive pressure that squeezes companies from every direction. One brother would build a $4.6 billion home and throw a $600 million wedding. The other would stand in a courtroom and publicly declare himself bankrupt, telling a judge he had no assets of meaningful value. Same father, same name, same starting line, radically different destinations. What Mukesh Ambani did next was either the most brilliant strategic bet in modern business history or the most expensive act of insanity ever funded by a single individual. Most people still cannot decide which one it was. The only thing everyone agrees on is that it worked. In 2016, Reliance launched Jio, a brand new telecommunications network built entirely from scratch with an investment exceeding $35 billion. Not an acquisition, not a partnership. A ground-up construction project involving millions of kilometers of fiber optic cable, thousands of cell towers, and a software infrastructure designed to handle a population of over 1 billion people. And on launch day, Ambani did something that made every telecom CEO on the planet choke on their morning coffee. He offered 4G data. Completely free. Free. Unlimited. For months. The impact was nuclear. Incumbent carriers who had been charging premium rates for sluggish 3G data watched their subscriber bases hemorrhage overnight. Small telecom companies folded. Major players scrambled to slash prices and match the offering, bleeding cash they could not afford to lose. Within a year, Jio had not just entered the market, it had reshaped India's entire digital infrastructure, driving data costs down to the lowest in the world and putting a smartphone in the hands of hundreds of millions of people who had never been online. Within 5 years, it had amassed over 500 million subscribers, a customer base larger than the combined populations of the United States and Canada. The platform attracted more than $20 billion in foreign investment from global giants, including Facebook and Google, who recognized that whoever controlled India's digital pipes controlled access to the fastest-growing consumer market on earth. But Ambani was not finished. Reliance Retail expanded into one of India's largest brick-and-mortar and e-commerce chains. A partnership with Disney created JioStar, a media powerhouse. Jio Financial Services launched as a standalone entity, offering lending, payments, and insurance. And underneath it all, Reliance committed over $80 billion to green energy, solar manufacturing, green hydrogen production, battery technology, and post-carbon infrastructure. The oil refining empire was building its own replacement before anyone else had finished writing the business plan. Ambani spent $35 billion building a telecom network from zero and gave the data away free. Would you bet your entire fortune on a product you plan to give away? Tell me in the comments. The skyscraper they call home. Now let us talk about the house. Except calling a house is like calling the Pacific Ocean a puddle. Antilia, named after a mythical Atlantic island, rises 27 stories above Altamount Road in South Mumbai, one of the most expensive stretches of real estate on the planet. The building stands 173 meters tall. It contains approximately 400,000 square feet of living space, and it houses exactly one family. Construction began in 2006 and finished in 2010, designed by Perkins and will out of Chicago, with interiors by Hirsch Bedner Associates and structural engineering by Sterling Engineering. The building is engineered to withstand a magnitude 8 earthquake in a city that sits on a seismic zone where tremors are not a theory, but a historical reality. Every floor has a unique design. No two levels look the same, as if 27 different luxury residences were stacked on top of each other. The finishes include crystals, imported marble from Italy, and mother-of-pearl inlays that catch the light differently depending on the time of day. Architectural motifs draw on the lotus flower and the sun, recurring through every corridor and common space. The entire structure adheres to vast Shastra principles, ancient Indian architectural guidelines, governing spatial harmony to such a degree that a ritual ceremony was conducted in 2011 before the family officially moved in. Construction and land costs pushed the price to between $1 and $2 billion. But with Mumbai's relentless real estate appreciation, the current estimated value has climbed to approximately $4.6 billion. 3 rooftop helipads where helicopters land and take off above Mumbai's skyline like taxis. 6 to 9 levels of climate-controlled underground parking for 168 cars, with a full-service automotive maintenance facility built into basement. So the vehicles never need to leave the building for an oil change or tire rotation. Multiple swimming pools, including terrace infinity pools with panoramic views of the Mumbai skyline stretching from the Arabian Sea to the distant hills. Multi-level hanging gardens inspired by the ancient Babylonian style, bringing green canopies and flowering vines into a vertical urban tower. A private temple for family worship, and the crown jewel of absurdity, the snow room where artificial snowflakes fall from the ceiling on command, offering climate relief in a city where the humidity alone can melt your willpower. Ambani family is not just richer than you think. They are more powerful than most nations. Their telecom network connects more people than any single carrier in the Western world. Their refinery process is more crude than most countries produce their retail stores serve. More customers per day than some nations have citizens, and they are still building, still expanding, still adding floors to a tower that already has no ceiling. A spice clerk's grandson threw a $600 million wedding and controls 10% of India's GDP. Is the Ambani Empire the greatest rags to riches story ever told, or something else entirely? Let me know what you think before you go. Here are 3 strategic truths from this story. First, control beats wealth every single time. Mukesh Ambani's net worth fluctuates with the stock market, but his 50% ownership stake embedded through layers of trust and holding companies means no board vote, no shareholder vote, and no hostile takeover can touch him. The richest people are not the ones with the highest net worth. They are the ones who can never be removed. Second, the most dangerous move in business is giving something away for free. If you can afford to outlast everyone who cannot, Geo gave away free data for months. Competitors collapsed when the free period ended. 500 million people were already locked into the ecosystem. The $35 billion gamble paid for itself by destroying the competition before they understood what hit them. Third, the real Ambani fortune is not measured in dollars. It is measured in dependency. When your company powers the phones, fuels the cars, stocks the stores, streams the cricket, and finances the loans of 1.4 billion people, you are not a businessman. You are the operating system of a nation, and operating systems do not get replaced. They get updated. If the story changed the way you see wealth and power, hit subscribe and turn on notifications for Billionaire Story, because next time we are pulling back the curtain on another empire that is hiding in plain sight.